Now to a report from Wednesday's programme, which looked not at Berlin as it is now, but at a Berlin that might have been. 60 years ago, Albert Speer, Hitler's chief architect, produced a monumental design for the new Berlin, the city that would become the capital of the Nazi thousand-year Reich. Of course, it was never built, until now. With the aid of some state-of-the-art computer technology, Benjamin Woolley flew back in time to the Berlin that never was.
This is how Berlin could have been, the capital of the thousand-year Reich, a city of grandeur unsurpassed by any other in the world, its buildings humbling in scale and cost, the pyramids of Egypt and St. Peter's in Rome. Designed by the architect Albert Speer in 1937, its inspiration came entirely from his patron, Adolf Hitler. It was the Führer's idea, his vision set in stone, the revenge of a one-time aspiring architect on the profession that had rejected him. In the event, Germany's defeat meant that only one of the major buildings, the Chancellery, was completed. But the plan survives and is now returning to haunt the new post-Cold War Berlin that struggles to rebuild itself as the capital of Europe's most powerful nation.
When you look at Berlin, you are seeing the landscape of Hitler's mind, if you like. It's the purest expression of Nazism. So, first and foremost, that is what Albert Speer's Berlin was. It was the embodiment of fascism, and in the architecture of Albert Speer, one can see the fundamental ideas of Adolf Hitler.
Albert Speer first came to Hitler's attention as the designer and organizer of the Nazi Party's ever more theatrical rallies. Here was a young man who seemed to understand the spectacular nature of National Socialism, and so Hitler gave him the job of creating the setting for the permanent rally that his Reich would become, a fantastic new Berlin, or Germania as it was to be renamed. But this was no fantasy. A magnificent scale model was constructed in 1939, which Hitler delighted in showing off to guests and dignitaries, and Speer promised to have every building on it completed by 1950. Big, brash, bold, Speer's plan was all this, and practical too. The key to this pageant was single-mindedness, focus, big, emphatic, unmistakable, read my lips architectural statements. And to create it, Speer used the world's biggest building block set, a collection of geometric shapes, perfect planes, cubes and spheres, grotesquely amplified. It was a simple formula, like Nazism.
The architecture of Berlin was definitely designed to reflect the philosophy of the Nazi state. And the Nazi state dealt with huge, vast concepts of blood, biological determinism, Darwinism, the struggle, elemental struggle, and those are reflected in the buildings, in the vast shapes. It's an expression of power, if you like. It's almost like a freeze frame of a goose step.
Speer had a very strong architectural kind of concept of how to impose power. In his early description of the Chancellery, which was the first building, the only one he really completed, he talks about this processional route of people going through the building and ending up going through one antechamber after another and getting more and more frightened and imposed upon until they finally arrived at the Führer's office and had to walk all the way across, you know, with him behind the desk. I mean, it's a sort of classic kind of instigation of fear from start to finish. And I mean, I think they really tried to do the same thing with the overall plan, that this sort of imposition of incredible power and weight onto the population as a whole.
This, then, is the epic journey that visitors to the new Berlin would take. Lining the route, they would find ministries of propaganda and justice, the headquarters of AEG and AGFA, sinister-sounding museums of Germanic culture and ethnology. But these weren't the destination. In any other setting, such buildings would be monuments in themselves, but here they merely serve to draw your attention to what lies ahead, to the shape that looms in the distance. That's the destination. The Great Hall dominated Speer's plan. It was to be the biggest building in the world, too immense for mere mortals to grasp, like the awesome power of the state it was supposed to symbolize. Its huge dome, reaching over 1/4 of a kilometre into the sky, would, Hitler boasted, make that of St. Peter's in Rome look like a toy. It's the silhouette of Hitler's Great Hall that now looms over Berlin's post-Cold War skyline. The city is having to redevelop the very same buildings, government ministries moving here from Bonn, corporate headquarters, museums, on the very same land that was to be the site of the Great Hall. From this podium, Hitler hoped to become the focus of 100,000 points of view. From here, his words, amplified by the acoustics of the vast vault around him, would carry across a Nazified world. He would be visible to everyone, audible everywhere, impossible to ignore. Except it wouldn't have worked. It was said that the breath of the multitude crowded onto these terraces would rise up and condense into a cloud that would form in the dome, turning even Hitler's ranting speeches from hot air into soft rain.
Dieser Stadt und dem Land